festivals are popular across the world, with Christmas dominating much of the Western tradition. It's a winning recipe of things we love: friends, family, gift-giving, singing, feasting, partying, and more. The Romans too celebrated Christmas as far back as the 4th century AD. However, before that, they had their own winter holiday, which honestly blows the stockings off our own tradition. It was a week-long Mardi Gras-style street festival fueled by endless drinking, where slaves became masters and fools were crowned king. You had all your classic holiday-style caroling and gift-giving, though far, far naughtier, with a healthy dose of ancient blackjack and hookers sprinkled on top. This was the festival of Saturnalia, Rome's awesome pagan Christmas. Like many in the ancient world, the Roman year was filled with festivals. These celebrated all kinds of important events, but were aimed mostly at making sure the gods were kept happy. After all, there was nothing more important for the well-being of the individual and the state. Such holidays were known as dies feriales. There were many of these every month, each with their own specific traditions. Generally speaking, the more important festivals coincided with major events like the change of seasons or the new year, with the relevant god or gods taking center stage. A short list of some of those festivals includes the Lupercalia in February, the Liberalia in March, the Bondia and the Lemuria in May, the Ludi Apollinaris in July, the Herculean Victus in August, and the Saturnalia in December. While all of these certainly merit their own episode, today we'll be focusing on Rome's end-of-year festival that would later transform into our Christmas. As with most other Roman religious customs, Saturnalia traces its origins back to the Greeks. It is this Hellenistic civilization which influenced Roman mythology early in its development and would continue to do so over the centuries. The Roman god Saturn, for example, is roughly synonymous with the Greek god Kronos, both of whom are associated with rebirth, harvest, and heralding a new golden age. In Rome, the holiday of Saturnalia started out humbly as an agricultural festival set around the winter solstice in December, when the people would collect their last harvest of the year. As they concluded this work, they would mark the occasion by honoring Saturn. This would be done at the temple of the harvest god at the foot of the Capitoline Hill. Here, Rome's priests would gather at the head of the population, with the other upper classes wearing their best togas and the plebeians wearing their finest tunics. A parade of bulls, the largest of the year, would then be brought in and sacrificed. The event was carried out under the watchful eye of Saturn himself. The way this worked is the priests would actually bring with them a statue of the god bound in wool. As the ceremonies began, they would ritualistically unwrap the statue and place it on a couch. Symbolically, this represented the idea of rebirth, where Saturn would appear like a newborn child springing from the womb in the 10th month. Once upon his couch, the god would then be able to partake in the feasts which followed. For the remainder of the day, all forms of work and public business would be suspended. Over time, as Rome grew, the holiday would continue to evolve. The official ceremony we have just described apparently underwent a series of reforms around the 3rd century BC, when Greek practices were imported upon consultation with the Sibylline books. Additionally, the festival would now be pinned to December 17th, rather than arbitrarily following the final harvest. Because of the holiday's popularity, it was also incrementally expanded over time, from one feast day up to a total of 7. Let's now take a closer look at the full glory of this pagan Christmas. The days leading up to Saturnalia would have Rome abuzz. As a major public holiday, it was the duty of the aediles to oversee the official preparations. With their reputation on the line, they would have been hard at work planning on how to make this year's celebrations as memorable as possible. Part of this involved employing hundreds of laborers to transform Rome for the occasion by cleaning the streets, setting up decorations, and erecting temporary structures. This would be necessary to accommodate the huge swell in the city's population caused by celebrants flocking in from the countryside. After all, Rome was still a highly rural society, with many small towns and farms dominating the land. Saturnalia, as a harvest festival, was a particularly strong magnet for farmers who were keen to give thanks to Saturn, as well as to be able to reunite with old friends and acquaintances in the big city. Thus, Rome's homes, inns, and taverns filled with growing excitement as families looked forward to the festivities. With the days slowly ticking away, people were sure to be rushing around to make final preparations and close out business before the holidays. Finally, the day would come. It was December 17th. Starting in the early hours of the morning, people across Rome would awake and begin to stream into the Forum, eager to secure the best spots and celebrate the time-honored tribute to Saturn. Once settled, they waited with bated breath. Soon, their patience would be rewarded by a low rumble that would begin to grow and grow until, in the distance, its source was revealed. A grand parade was making its way through the streets of Rome. At its head were the priests and senate, and behind them a seemingly endless line of bulls. This procession made its way past the throngs of onlookers until eventually coming to a stop before the Temple of Saturn. Here, the animals would then be sacrificed and a great feast prepared with a reclining statue of Saturn as its honorary guest. Surely the god would be most pleased by this dazzling display of piety. Rome's good fortune for the following year had been secured. Thus ended the official component of Saturnalia. All public business was stopped on this day and would remain closed for the duration of the festival. No law courts were conducted, all schools were closed, and even the mechanisms to declare war were shut down. This was a time for celebration, and the Romans were particularly good at that. The following free-flowing festivities were guided only by customs. But while unregulated, they did share the common theme of a world turned upside down where traditional roles and social norms were inverted. It seems that this may have gotten its origin as a nod to the idea of a return to Saturn's golden age, which had existed before rank and order, before slavery and property. Now was a time to make this Edenic existence a reality. The first sign of change were the holiday clothes. During the festival, people traded their bland togas for brightly colored garments, and everyone from emperor to slave wore the felt pileus cap, which traditionally signified one's status as a free man. The second sign of change was the new social order. Each family would select a princeps, or leader of Saturnalia, who was typically of lower status. This might be a child or servant. Slaves were now treated as equals, and might even be elevated to the point that their masters served them. Reportedly, slaves were exempt from punishment, and even allowed to insult their masters, within bounds of reason. This all came together at the grand public feast on the first day of Saturnalia, following the religious ceremony at the Temple of Saturn. The Aediles for the year would actually foot the bill and plan out the banquet, which meant that its appearance depended on who was responsible, and how much money they had. Most of the time, tables would be set up in the forum, the only open space large enough to hold such a large population. The Aediles would coordinate with the hundreds of local bakeries and other food providers who worked overtime to build up a massive stockpile for the occasion. The meals were as extravagant as possible and became truly incredible with the rise of the cosmopolitan empire. Arriving at the feast, one would witness a truly impressive display. From the bakers came the best breads, tarts, spice cakes, pastries, and little gaiuses, while from the merchants and farmers came produce of every description: plums, pears, apples, nuts, dates, and more. They would be incorporated into dishes, made into candied fruit, and eaten whole. In addition were all kinds of meats, and wines from every corner of the empire were set out to give the illusion of a truly unlimited river of drink. Even rare delicacies were served up to all, things that the upper classes ate but the poor couldn't afford, like stuffed dormice, sow wombs, as well as varieties of exotic fish and birds including lampreys, flamingos, and peacocks. This fantastical banquet of dreams was gorged upon by all of Rome. For hours everyone ate and drank to their heart's content. When the meal was finally winding down, the shouts of "Yo Saturnalia" would break out. They heralded that the greatest party of the year had only just begun. For 7 days, people partied in a carnival-like atmosphere akin to a New Orleans Mardi Gras. Everyone was encouraged to join in on the fun, and sleep was in short supply. However, there were of course your typical Christmas Grinches. The philosopher Seneca apparently tried to convince a friend to replace the wild revelry with a quiet dinner, and Pliny the Younger actually had a soundproof suite built so that he could get work done throughout the week while his entire household partied. But peace and quiet were truly hard to come by. Here is a revealing quote from Libanius. "Night falls, but no one sleeps. The common people engage in songs, wild dancing, and mocking jest. They do this even in the commercial district, barging in, pounding on doors, shouting and mocking. Some people are angry with what they hear, but others consider it an occasion for laughter. No one present is so austere that he censures these goings-on. Even he who is too self-controlled to laugh breaks out laughing." Meanwhile, the public spaces teemed with activity. The Forum, for instance, drew huge crowds to see a range of itinerant performers, from jugglers to puppeteers and snake charmers. Otherwise illegal gambling tables were set up as well and drew many participants. Sponsors might also pay for lavish displays of entertainment. In one instance, we hear of female gladiatrices, dwarfs, buxom Lydian girls, and performers who came in from Syria to Spain. Emperors too got in on the fun, and were not to be outdone. Nero was infamous for stealing the show by providing a truly impressive number of free prostitutes for the week. This was definitely a naughty Christmas, and would seem at odds with our own holiday. However, there were other traditions which will seem more familiar. One of these was the practice of gift-giving, which took place throughout the week. The poet Martial writes about individual, personalized gifts with small greeting cards to go with them, and even alludes to a secret Santa-style form of gift-giving that was popular. These ancient Roman presents could be anything: musical instruments, writing tablets, boxes of hobby supplies, beauty products, toothpicks, tableware, exercise equipment, weapons, or even a well-bred pig. Children generally got dolls, while close friends were given special wax candles that were lit to signal the advent of a golden age coming in the new year. Augustus himself loved the holiday, and gave lavish and gag gifts in equal measure. Quote, "On the Saturnalia, and at any other time when he took it into his head, he would sometimes give gifts of clothing, or gold and silver, sometimes all kinds of coins, including old pieces of the king's and foreign money, sometimes nothing, but haircloth, sponges, pokers, and tongs, and other such things under misleading names of double meaning. Sometimes the sheer volume of presents required for the holidays lowered their average quality. As Martial writes, quote, "Let everyone give his guest an appropriate gift. But they're all worthless garbage, you might say. Well, no one says they're not. No one would deny anything so obvious." Another tradition with modern echoes was the practice of the kings of Saturnalia, who were crowned by lot. During their reign, they had to be obeyed, with the sole requirement that their edicts be dumb commands. For example, telling everyone in the street to stop what they were doing and dance, to give the flute girls piggyback rides around the block, or to dunk an innocent bystander in a nearby fountain. However, things could go too far if the liberties of the holiday crossed the line into reality. For example, we are told that when Julius Caesar was celebrating Saturnalia after having won his civil war, his lieutenant Mark Antony made a big show of offering the crown of Saturnalia to Caesar. This was met by the fury of a booing crowd. The role was supposed to be a joke, making a mockery of the powerful. To give the joke crowned to an actual dictator of Rome was not fun, and struck a little too close to home. Clearly, there were still some lines that should not be crossed. At long last, the festival of Saturnalia came to an end. The kings were symbolically dethroned to mark the occasion, and everyone had their last hurrah, with shouts of "Yo Saturnalia!" Perhaps their throbbing heads would look forward to the days of calm which followed, but it wouldn't be long before they began to dream of next year's festivities. As one might imagine, the tremendous popularity of Saturnalia ensured that it lived on for centuries. This trend was further propelled because, unlike many other Roman festivals, the Saturnalia was not tied to the city of Rome itself, and therefore gained traction across the empire. After all, winter celebrations are a universal tradition which transcend borders, especially when they involve the winning combination of feasting, drinking, and partying. Such was the popularity of Saturnalia that when Christianity rose to dominance in the 4th century AD, the pagan holiday would be co-opted rather than cancelled. It appears that this is one of the reasons Christmas was set just a few days after Saturnalia on the 25th instead of the 17th, and maintained many of the same customs. This hybridized holiday was a far rowdier event in these early days, and while the mass street partying has generally been toned down over the ages, many things are still held as a tradition. For years, the Feast of Fools was an incredibly popular festival until it was banned by the church in the 15th and 16th centuries. Wax candles are still a central part of a traditional Christmas with Advent candles, and freedmen's caps have generally been replaced by Santa hats, or if you live in Britain, paper caps and crowns. And of course, the tradition of giving gifts to family and friends is still running strong. Thanks for watching this episode. What do you think of the pagan origins of Christmas? Would you prefer a more Saturnalia festival, or are you more fond of the family-friendly version? Feel free to leave any questions in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe for more content. A very special thanks to the patrons for funding the channel, and to the researchers, writers, and artists who made this episode possible. Yo Saturnalia!